computers are hard. Computers are hard.
Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're super excited that you can join us today. And we are really excited. We have Paula Victoria Dai on with us today. She is the professional palmist and author behind P is for Palmistry. Paula learned palmistry at a young age from her grandmother and has grown her practice through virtual readings, events, markets, and residences in the Los Angeles area. With over 25 years of palmistry practice and experience connecting with people through art curation, professional organizing, and in her interior design studio, Paula's readings are deeply focused. Her readings help others discover their own set of personal strengths and guide them through the transitions with ease, clarity, and confidence. Her first book, In Your Hands, A Kid's Guide to Palmistry, comes out in May of this year, so it's already out and is available. Well, I guess it's not available for pre-order because it's
It's
already out.
available.
Yay! And it's an
Go get
amazing
it,
book.
everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
So what inspired you to write this book? Because I noticed that it's like for kids, but it's also really good for someone like myself that doesn't know a lot about palmistry to kind of break it
Yeah.
down into easy to read.
Well, that's so good to hear, first off, that it is very digestible and approachable. I was actually approached to write the book, so I can't take full credit of going through the whole book proposal process for this book. I existed as an Instagram and was doing, at the time, I was asked to do the book virtual readings. It was pandemic times. I was sometime in the 2020 era of everything, and Moondust Press had found me online and we started just chatting. I think I had a sort of Instagram friend pickup line and I said, they have a book, C is for Coven. And so I said, is P for Palmistry? And then we kicked it off and we got to know each other a little bit more. And then somewhere down the road, we decided to do a how-to for palmistry for kids because there was already one for tarot. Sarah Beck did a wonderful tarot for kids book. And so we decided, there's astrology for kids, there's witchcraft for kids, there's a lot of types of books for kids, but there's not really one go-to palmistry book for kids. And I thought it was a perfect roundabout way to address my inner child's wishes, my baby Paula way back when wishes when I started learning. So my grandmother first introduced me to palmistry when I was very young in the garden. It was sort of like a game where it was, she wasn't a palm reader, but she knew strangely a lot about it. And the family is still like, we didn't know. A lot of people didn't know because I come from a very superstitious Catholic family. And then I just fell in love with the palmistry arts and I dug deep. I would sit in the bookstore in the New Age section it was called back then and I would
Nice.
find all of the how-to palmistry books and learn about it. And I just really took to it. And as a kid, I was just really curious like that. I was really into, gemstones. You would go to the mall then and they'd have the pick 10 in a little pouch. And so I was really into learning details about different things like that and about nature. And I was the kid who dug into this encyclopedia. And I wanted to, in approaching this book, I wanted to write a book for that version of myself. And there's so many, I have friends with kids like that. And I wanted to write a book that was complementary to their search of knowledge and more than maybe they are looking to learn, just because I want them to know that they can learn it too in an approachable way. But also, I meet so many people now in that I'm reading in person and online that want to learn, and sometimes it's just not approachable the way that books write it, or it's hard when you're not practicing it because you learn one way, but then your hand could look totally different, and then you're sort of shut off to it. So I wanted to write it for everyone's, inner child, I guess, was my approach. I was not expecting a big reception from adults. I did not think about that once in writing the book. I just thought about what would I want as a kid? What would I want to stumble upon on the bookshelf? And thankfully, it really has hit it off with a lot of, like a very wide variety of people. So not just kids. And I think that um, a lot of parents who want to learn too and teach their kids that are learning together with their kids, which has been so beautiful.
That's what
But just
I thought.
before we run, I said to Kim, yeah, it'll give me an opportunity to catch up too. I mean, I do palmistry, and so I thought, maybe you're going to renew some things with me as well, and that's always a wonderful thing. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Nothing
Yeah.
nothing beats a good refresh. So hopefully it's a reminder, but also a different there's a lot of kid examples in the book too. So it'll be kind of a fun take on the things maybe you already know.
Well, I
good,
loved it
good.
too because I did think what you were saying there with parents with their kids of learning it together and having that bonding time. But one thing that I loved about it was there was illustrations that were so simple that it was like you can get it, right? It's like, oh, this is where this line is. This is how, what, right? And the different looks of it and what it means. And so it really made me lean into it to be able to say, how much more could you explore with this?
Yes.
And, like kids can start learning about themselves. But when I was reading it, I was certainly like looking at my palms and like, oh, yeah, this is really cool.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Alyssa Marie, the illustrator, she is like an angel. I say she made the book what it is. Honestly, in the process, Moondust Press set Alyssa and I together for the book. I wrote the book, and then the original manuscript was sent to Alyssa, and from that, she came up with a lot of the original proposed illustrations made it into the book, and it was almost like a complete first pass was like a complete win. So
Nice.
she really, really understood. I love that she broke things down into elemental personalities. There's like different characters in the book. And so, kids can relate to like, oh, I'm an earth hand. That's the earth hand in the book. That's the kid who's the earth hand. And so it was just so cool to see illustrated. It was like breathing life into it after just working with words on my end. So
Right.
yeah, I'm glad that it really resonates with you and with a lot of the readers now.
Good.
Yeah. Well, and it did. And I think kids will like it because it's very colorful and it's very, like I said, it's very self-explanatory. So they can, read it independently or with a parent, which is nice too. And, I think I love palmistry and I've always kind of loved, well, anything woo, but like I've always loved it because there's also behind it, there's just so much information about ourselves that, when you start looking at the lines in your hands, you're like, wow, that is just so me. And
Yeah.
yeah, explaining yourself. And it's like, wow, okay, I didn't know my hands said that.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of different practices that approach personality in that way, like natal charts. Yeah, you can read it's like a really obscure specific angle of something in your natal chart and it's like wow, yeah, that really resonates, but for whatever reason, for me at least, and maybe this is the case for you, because it's so tactile, and you can touch it and feel it and see the lines on your hand change over time, it's like yeah, it really does feel like me, and it's with you physically, so yeah, totally agree.
So do our lines on our hands change because we change and we're evolving, and so different things in our lives happen that alter what is happening in our hands?
Yes. So your hands change all the time with every decision you make, and it might not seem right then and there that it's not going to, you're like, okay, I'm going to get a different dish at my local, restaurant today. And bam, like, oh, my hand is different, but I like to tell people 6 months to a year, you'll see the effects of, it's sort of like doing, like working with moon cycles, but, in 6 months, you sort of see the results, or you can do a check-in and see what things look like, or in 1 year. I think the soonest I've seen major changes in the lines is 3 months, and it's a good friend of mine. I think I've read the most out of anyone, which I appreciate that she comes for checkups so often. And, she's my guinea pig at this point, and we get to look at that. But yeah, I would say a year, birthday readings are the best.
Nice.
Birthday or like a holiday, if you want to do solstice readings, that sort of thing, to sort of check in. So big decisions like job transitions, relocations, marriages, divorces, children. Anything like that. If you pick up a new hobby, fall in love with, you go on a trip and you fall in love with a new culture, things like that really shift the most, I think, in people's hands. Um, and that's when you start to see certain specific timing in the hand as well, which is really fun. So I do a lot of life transition readings, and like those I think are like my bread and butter. I really love those. I love to help people sort of navigate that. And yes, yeah, they change over time. I like to say in my practice, I know there's different ways of approaching this, but the left hand is what you're born with, and then the right hand is what you make of your life. So it's all the ways you decided to not follow directions. So the right hand is typically what I check in on people, and it's fascinating sometimes to see, different hand types can change differently too. An earth hand is probably less likely to change than like a fire hand or that sort of thing, just because of what they prefer, stability versus spontaneity. But it's been cool to see that.
Yeah, I think that is really amazing. And I just think it's interesting because even when I was looking at my hands, I was like, oh, I feel like my hands used to be like, especially both my hands used to be way more lined. And now my left hand seems like it's not as liney as it used to be. So I don't know what
Oh.
that's about, but I just think it's fascinating just how they change and how they just tell us so much about ourselves. Could you use your hands when you're doing it then as kind of what you're born, your left, right? You said is kind of
So the left is, I see the left sort of like the life plan, but it
okay.
also, you can approach it. Sometimes I'll see it as how you interact in your most intimate circle or your private life.
Okay.
Um, Typically when I see it first, like I'll sort of look at it into layers, but I first approach it as your life plan, sort of like before you came into this world, what you set out, how you set out to learn certain lessons you've decided to learn. And and then your right hand is like current circumstances, and then like who your coworkers know or who your so like outward social circle knows.
Right. Okay. So could you use your left hand then to sort of plan some different things in your life? I know they don't always go according to
Uh,
plan because isn't there that, make a plan, God laughs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, fate interjects, right? That's really interesting. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. So your left hand, could you use, I'm looking at my left hand now because I'm like, can I use you to make plans? That would be lovely. Uh,
Wouldn't it?
yes and no, depending on what your right hand currently looks like, right? And I've seen hands that are drastically different. I've seen hands that look very, very similar, and you're like, oh, you're born this way, stayed that way. That's you. Sometimes I will say sometimes there are periods of time where things are similar but a little bit different. Let's say instead of you making a huge drastic change, you kind of made a pivot, right? Maybe you instead of moving across the country, you moved to like the next town over, or something like that, right? It's a random example, but I think you could use your left hand to navigate the extremity of the change. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I think. Yes, I believe your fate's in your hands, but I do also believe that fate will keep pushing you back in the direction it wants you to go in. Whatever forces that be, right? I use fate like very openly. Like there's a lot of moving pieces I think that go into play with that. But I think that, you can keep trying and trying, but then sometimes you end up doing the same thing, or sometimes you end up in the same circumstance, but you got there totally differently, which I did read someone the other week where that was the case, like you avoided a big um, shift, but you still ended up in the same place that you wanted to be. So.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Thanks. My brain just goes, whoo. Um,
Yeah.
I get because I think because I was also thinking like as far as like health and things like those that we need to pay attention to in our lives. If we kind of had that sort of precursor to, hey, at this
Mhm.
point in your life, you should probably think about making changes or, leading up to that point, potentially you could change that based on what you know ahead of time.
Yes. So there are a few things in health. I typically don't read for health in someone's hand unless they ask me, and I'm like, that's me, but also please consult like any sort of healing professional that's not me. But
Right.
sometimes I'll see anything that you might be genetically predisposed to in the hand. So major things I'll ask about are, hypertension, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, and sometimes like heart and lung things, those are things that I tend to call out because they're things that you can probably adjust or shift the outcome of with lifestyle changes and with changes you can change, right? Changes that you can implement. Um, and also, like I have an autoimmune disease. I have a celiac, and that also comes with inflammation and all of the repercussions of that. And it was such a tough process personally for me to get diagnosed and to be heard. And I know it's so tough now in the medical world to, get a diagnosis for something like an autoimmune disease. So I want people to feel like they're validated in the symptoms they have and the journey they're on, and let them know, you're not making this up. Something is going on. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I think it's worth continuing the exploration. There is something there because 10 out of 10 times there's a reason why certain things are on the hand, in terms of autoimmune, inflammatory, anything like that. So
Right.
those are things I kind of will mention. And there's things that come as a surprise after reading, and there's no way of calling it out, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true.
Hmm.
Well, I find anything that you can look at the hands and it guide you in some direction is a good thing. I know when the kids were younger, Kimmy would bring her friends over, so would Dean, but mostly Kim, and we would do the palmistry, and the kids enjoyed it, like they really did,
Oh,
and
that's amazing.
it created something different for them as well. So I think it's good what you did there because it
Thank
does
you.
push the kids together, and that was the whole idea, was bring the kids together, make them want to be together and that type of thing. And of course I'd like to have them at home, so
Yes.
that was always a good thing as well. But no, it's a good thing you did there. I think people are really going to like that.
Thank
And
you. I appreciate that. And I
yeah,
appreciate that kids now they can use this book as doing something tactile and getting to know each other off of, the
yeah.
internet and off of screens. And
Oh, totally.
yeah, I know. I mean, I see it now with little ones, and I mean all ages, right? We're all kind of hooked to a screen at some time or another. We all have like that
Yeah,
show we really want to binge watch and anything like that. But Um, I uh, I appreciate that. It's a way of getting to know someone because that's what I did when I was younger, and a way of connecting and finding similarities and even differences and starting a conversation about it. So that's really amazing that you did that.
yeah. So when you were younger and you were doing this type of thing, is that what took you on your journey of where you are now and what else you do now as well?
Uh, Sort of. So I was always interested in spirituality in general, I would say, but any sort of like occult studies. I was interested in like mythology. I was like anything that sort of had like a rich like history, like spiritual history to it, I would say. I think like my love of everything in this direction started with Greek mythology and started with the map of the underworld, actually.
Okay.
I don't, I, little Paula, like I might have been like 7 or 8, was very into Greek mythology and still am. My daughter is named after I might be butchering the actual Astray, but her name's Aster. And we loved the story behind that and the aster flower, and it just worked out that way. And then, so when I found palmistry, I think it just everything started clicking together where I was like, there are things that we're not learning in school, and there are things that are beyond what I'm experiencing going to church every Sunday because I grew up Catholic and in a uniform and in a classroom with set curriculum. And I was always the creative, weird kid. I read at recess, and I would bring encyclopedias and dictionaries and like, learn what I could with what I was interested in the moment. And um, so was very into that and very into reading fiction, like fantasy fiction growing up. And reading it, I always felt like there was more to it than it just being a made up story, And there is. There is now as an adult, you look back and you know how much research goes into books like that. And so I think I've always just wanted to learn and grow. My background is in art history, and that fascination also came from all of this, right? I wanted to learn about the history of cultures and art and why they made things and how things were then brought into other versions, like, church paintings were appropriated from other, works of art and other forms of worship.
Mhm.
And it sort of creates this spiral of interest, of visual interest. And I think because I've always been so hands-on and tactile in my learning and so visual, that's why palmistry stuck moving forward. But in adulthood, I would say probably like high school through past college, I focused on just that. Like I was like, I just need to adult. I need to, put the things aside that are not tangible and real and don't pay your rent, right? And focus on that and put your foot in the world. And then I actually came back to palmistry more fully. It was always kind of there in the peripheral when I met my wife in grad school for interior design. And we went on our first, she was in my studio. We were trying to just be friends because I had gone through a very rough breakup. We were in the same studio. We didn't want to, mix that and make it complicated for our friends and classmates. And then we said, you know what, first date. Let's go. Enough is enough. And on the date, I all of a sudden I felt like I needed to say, can I see your hands for a second? And it seems like such a like first date flirty thing. And but I was sincere. I was like, I feel like I need to look at this person's hands. And I did. And that was the start of it all. That of everything. That was the start of our relationship. She was amazed. I nicknamed her my palmistry pimp, but just because she continues to push me on this journey and feed it and help it and nurture it. And
Awesome. That's
it
awesome.
grew from there and became the business that it is today for me. But a very live practice and has led to a very rich community of people that I'm very grateful for.
That's
I know
amazing.
that yeah, I know it was I was dating too. I always checked the man's thumb.
Yes, that's amazing. That's such a good thing to check. Yes, that's important. Did you find
Told
a
me
good
lots
thumb?
about the individual, and I thought, no, no.
Yeah. You don't want someone too, thummy.
Exactly. Do you find that with palmistry, like any kind of, these occult arts, do you find that there's some intuition that goes with the story that you're telling as you're looking at the palms? That, because I find, honestly, for the longest time, I only knew the lifeline, but I always find when I look at it, there's just so much intuition that comes with it. So I'd be curious what you.
Absolutely. I think it's like intuition in any practice. It grows with your practice and you learn more. I I fought it so hard. I fought the intuitive element of it so hard when I came back to it and I was refreshing and I was reading people and I was like, I just want people to know what they can physically see and I don't want to make it any kind of woo-woo anything. And that's a funny version of myself about like what 10 years ago. That's a very funny version. I laugh at it now, but it is intuitive, absolutely. I mean, you can take it as what it is on the surface and leave it at that, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think that you're sorely missing a huge point of it, if that makes sense. And there's layers of learning it as well. I say that part, like if you divide it into parts, it's one part intuition, one part what you see, and one part what you feel, like in physically feel on the hand. So it's sort of separated in thirds, and that's how I explain it in the book too.
Nice.
Because I want kids to know that, right? Like you can touch and feel, and that's a big part of learning as a kid, especially in that age range that the book is aimed towards. And also looking and investigating and finding things on your hand, that's huge, especially because it changes all the time. But intuition, I think, is something that grows over time, and I think kids actually have it much more naturally than we do, right? I feel like
Yeah,
it ebbs and flows, and something gets lost along the way and refound in life at whatever point is right for you. Um, and I think as my practice has grown and I've gotten to know more people, it absolutely is. And it's different per reading, right? Like any reading with any person, you connect with more people, like some people more than others, and there are some readings where it's like, wow, I don't know where that came from at all, but that person needed to hear it, you know?
it's
Um,
true.
but when I do readings, when I sit with someone and I'm doing a reading, I also want them to see what is there. So now I combine it with, let me walk you through this like you're taking a mini crash course in palmistry. I want you to know I'm looking at the shape of your hand first. This is what I see. I want you to know that, like, let's start with this line because that's what's going to change everything in your hand. And
Yeah,
I think people appreciate that because I don't want it to be a quick reading of just intuition alone.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. You have a picture or you have a copy of your book to show everybody so they know what to go and get because it's an
I
amazing
do.
book. Yay!
Here it is, the beautiful book.
tell me.
And Alyssa, of course, illustrated the cover, and it's gorgeous. I believe she can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe this girl here is inspired by her niece. And
Okay,
yeah, and so I loved that when she told me that. I said, "Absolutely, keep it," because she asked me, "Do you want me to change any of the characters, like anything in the book that needs some revisions?" I said, "No, this is your vision as much as mine." But the side as well is thumbprints and fingerprints, and everything is just so
oh,
thoughtfully illustrated as well.
very
Um,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, it is very beautiful. So
It
I
is.
and like I say, I really loved that it was simple enough and made sense that, you can lean into it a little bit too, because you're like, although at some points I was like, I should go get my glasses because I can't see those lines.
Magnifying glasses help always, and
Yeah,
really highlighting or sunlight, direct sunlight. Yeah, I know. It's tough sometimes.
it is.
Do people often, can people send you a picture of their hand and you will do it over the internet for them and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I
Okay.
actually started the practice that way. When it was a very seedling of a business. I had just moved to LA and I was working remotely. And so my wife would send me pictures of her coworkers' hands that she was just meeting at her new job on Facebook Messenger and
Yeah,
didn't tell me anything. She said, read this. And it was just a picture of a hand. And so that's how it kind of came to be. I started the Instagram, and then in the pandemic, it was solely online. So I have instructions if you're interested. I don't have any bookings, schedule openings right now, but I'm looking to do a couple of big days this summer where I do sort of big reading days. So keep an eye out. But I have instructions of how to take the picture of your hand, what lighting is good, and which pictures I need. So um,
nice.
yeah, it was tough to get back into it that way with pictures, but I kind of formulated a process that worked, I think.
Good, good,
Hmm.
very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I've been following you on Instagram a little bit there and I was noticing like you've had some reels about, things not to say in readings and, different things like that. So I love that you talk about this on your social media that it's like when people have leaned into this and they want to know more to know some maybe do's and don'ts. So could you give us a couple of the do's and don'ts?
Ooh. Yes. Oh, I love these questions. So, okay, so first, do be in an environment that is either private or quiet where you feel is safe for you and your sitter. So sometimes I'm doing readings at markets, and there, of course, there's people around and there's noise around, but that could mean clearing your environment. So, lighting some incense, ringing a bell. In the book, I use the example for kids who maybe are just getting into this. Open a window, let the breeze through, blow through. So create a safe and quiet and private enough environment for you and your sitter. So that's a big, big do. Do come into the reading grounded. Don't come into it with your outside emotions. I think that that's very simply put for both kids and adults, right? Leave everything out of the space and just focus on the reading at hand and the person that you're sitting with because it's not about
Right.
you. And so those are two really big do's. I would say a big, well, also do have good lighting. That's important. And
I learned
yeah,
that.
I know it's always sometimes I'm like, oh, I started bringing lamps to markets, even if it's like an outdoor market, because it helps. And I guess don't bring your negative emotions or don't bring your ego into it. It's big.
Right.
Um, don't, a big don't for me is don't approach your reading fatalistically. So don't the wording of your reading is important. And I've been talking about that a lot this year, which I think is what you're talking about
Mm,
on one of my Instagram reels. I'm
mm,
probably like two or three at this point, is the way that you word a reading is so important for the sitter because they could sit with it for a year. I've had people who have come back after 2 years and they remember a small detail I told them that to me was just in passing in a reading and they lived by it. And thankfully what I say is positive and reinforces good qualities that they are looking to work on. But
Right.
imagine if you told something to someone like, oh, it looks like maybe you're not going to be breathing well this year, or it looks like your job might be in trouble. And then for a year, they might be worried about their work, and they're treading carefully, they're acting differently at work. So it can really impact how someone lives their
yeah.
life, even if they come into the reading thinking, oh, this is just for fun. Anything someone says to you, like especially you don't know where maybe the intuition's coming from if you're coming into it
Right.
with a new, fresh eyes to approaching any kind of reading. You don't know who you're getting in a sitting. You don't know how they're going to digest what you're saying.
That's
So
right.
yeah,
That's right.
and that it goes for any reading, not just a palm reading or any conversation, honestly, but especially with any sort of intuitive reading, any sort of psychic reading, um, verbiage is incredibly important. So
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
totally agree.
That's amazing. If you had something to tell people about palmistry or about anything that you do to put into their spiritual toolkit, what would it be?
Ooh, like how they could use palmistry as a tool. I This might be a little bit when you get down the road, but if you're taking palmistry and learning it as the art that it is and starting to use it more seriously as a tool as you would maybe like your favorite tarot deck or um anything like that, then it's really wonderful for timing. I think something that I've been studying a lot this year is using palmistry as a form of like practice in the liminal. Um, and not like, yes, liminal, like I do a lot of dream work and all of that, but I mean more liminal space in life of a lot of people come to me because they want to know when they're getting a job, when they're gonna get pregnant, when they're gonna find their person. But I like to approach it as, well, how are you living before you get to that point? Like, what is that liminal space of exploration of yourself to get to that point? And I think that it's a really great tool for that. Sometimes I will use tarot to check something that comes in a reading. For me personally, I don't do that professionally in my readings, but if I'm like studying, right, on my own. So I think in the reverse sense, it's a great way of looking at if you're doing, let's say, a spread for yourself, a tarot spread, and then you want to double check that in another form. Palmistry is a great way of looking at when different events might come up, whether they might be like a good thing or maybe not so great thing, or a period of learning, like those kinds of things you can see, and then how you can approach that until you get to that point. Does that make
Right.
sense? Kind of,
Right. Yeah.
I'm something I'm working with right now. So, but I think that it's like a really great way to approach palmistry
Right.
rather than just looking for dates. Obviously, it takes you a while to get there, and every decision you make along the way is going to help you get there and it's going to enforce you getting there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think too, when you think about just a lot of different things that we do in life, especially if you do anything with the moon cycles and things like that, we are always looking, right? What's transforming in those periods and how are we
Yeah.
pushing ourselves to get to that end goal that we want to get to and what little steps can we take? So I love that you can, kind of lean into it that way to learn some of that stuff. So I think that's a great thing for people to hear.
I think it is really good too for something I've been working on is creating sort of like new moon reflection, like journal points
Mhm.
with palm reading. So yeah, you made a really good point actually of like, checking in cyclically with your hand and exploring change in that way. Even like it doesn't have to be a 5-year period. It can totally be a 6-year period, a 1 month period.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
feel like with the different, especially the full moon and the new moon, I feel like I need about a day to just sit with the journal and the palms now and the tarot and the oracle and the meditation, dream journaling.
Absolutely.
I have no
Yeah.
time for work. I need to. No, just
Yeah.
kidding.
Do all this other
Yeah, this
stuff.
one was a big one too. I felt like we did a lot more for this new moon than we usually do. But yeah, it's definitely is. It's like okay, let me catch up with myself moment.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Well, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on my website, pisforpalmistry.com, and then on Instagram where I post a lot of the in the now updates. It's p dot is for palmistry. So same as the website with just a period after the P. I'm also on TikTok, same handle as Instagram. I'm newer to TikTok, so follow and give me some love, but also please don't judge. I'm learning. And yeah, and if you're in the LA area, I'm based in LA, so I am at events often and hope to post online as well some classes and um, maybe like, journal prompts and more participatory things in the virtual world this summer as well.
Nice.
Mhm.
That's
Nice. Very
amazing.
nice.
That is very amazing.
Yeah.
And do you have
Well,
anything that you're working on that you're leading into new creative endeavors down the road?
Yes, again, a good question. So, a big thing I'm working on is classes. I feel like I've been teasing it a long time on Instagram and people have been sort of like waiting, but I'm looking to do a big palmistry series course online, along with an online community people can join because I'm leaning more into people connecting through the art of palmistry. It's been happening a lot in my world, and I would love for it to happen for people. So I would say that that's the biggest thing right now is forming that community. So keep an eye out, follow on the Instagram, keep an eye out for when that's happening. But courses and community.
Wonderful.
beautiful.
That is
Good for
amazing.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that's
Mhm.
thank
that's
you.
absolutely
The big
amazing.
project, but now you're holding me to it, so I appreciate
Right?
that.
Now it's live or it's
It
live
has to
and
happen now.
everybody can hear it. So you have to do it now. You have to. 'Well, it sounds like too with your followers, they're like pushing you too, right? Which is always really nice when people are pushing us a little bit because sometimes we need that little bit of nudge, right? That gentle nudge. So
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I definitely need a big nudge. So, I'm appreciative of everyone poking me and asking me, especially you both. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank
yes,
you.
well, thank you. And if you had a final thought to leave with us and our followers, what would it be?
Ooh, final thought. Uh, Something today that has come up for me is um, don't approach things singularly, approach things by knowing that every little bit is a tool. So palmistry is just a tool, right? I focus on that professionally, but in my own life, I have my own rich practice, and I think that every bit of your practice just adds to whatever you let shine publicly as well. So, I went into a local tarot store today and I am looking for a new deck that I really resonate with, to add and to start working on that practice more because I feel like it could enrich my palmistry practice. And I think it's important for people to know that you don't have to dedicate your life to just one. That might be what you're seeing with people online, but online is just online. Everyone's got their own deep, rich practice that they're working on.
That's
And
right.
yeah, so I think that that's important too. Find whatever makes your heart happy and learn what you can about it. Don't just get stuck on one thing.
Yes, we
Nice.
definitely agree with that because, and it's
Do we
funny
ever?
because as you move through time, find like the older I get and I'm aging and my interests wane and go through different little, it's like they kind of just ebb and flow, right? And then
Hmm.
some things that maybe I was sort of not interested in now have reached out to me and are like, oh, this is actually interesting to you. Lean into this one a little bit more.
Exactly.
You don't need this one anymore. You can take that out of your practice, right? And like
Right.
you said, live that rich ritual for yourself of what matters
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Right,
that.
right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, practice always changes.
Hmm.
And what you connect with always changes. And it's just like the lines on your hands change. You change along with that. So
Right.
absolutely. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much for being on with us. It was wonderful.
It's
You
a
have such a
pleasure.
great energy about you, and
Yeah.
I,
It's
I
a good pleasure.
Too.
we're looking forward to seeing what new things you have coming up. And I hope everybody runs out and gets your book because it is really great. So thank you so much.
Please, yes, get the book. Thank you so much for having me on. This was such a fun interview, and
You're
it
welcome.
was lovely getting to know you both. And
Right
thank you
back
for
at
the
you.
excellent questions.
Thank you. And everybody else, we will see you on the next one.
You will.